At a financial wellness workshop in Phoenix last February, a facilitator asked the room a simple question. How many of you have a fully funded emergency fund? 2/3 of the hands went up. She asked a follow-up. How many of you feel financially secure? Less than a quarter of those hands stayed raised.
The people in that room had done exactly what every personal finance article, every financial influencer, every bank website told them to do. They had saved 3 to 6 months of expenses. They had followed the rule. And they still felt stuck. They still felt anxious. Some of them had been sitting on the same cash pile for 5, 6, 7 years, watching their checking account stay flat while their colleagues talked about index fund returns and Roth conversions and net worth milestones they couldn't imagine reaching.
Nobody in that room had done anything wrong. That's the part that makes this so insidious. They followed the advice exactly. The advice just hadn't told them what came next. And the thing that comes next, the thing that was quietly not happening while they felt responsible and prepared, was wealth building, actual compounding, actual forward motion toward a retirement that doesn't involve rationing prescriptions or moving in with their kids. Today, in part 1 of this 2-part series, we're going to talk about the emergency fund rule, why it exists, why it's correct, and why for millions of Americans in 2026, it has quietly become a financial ceiling instead of a financial floor. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why the safety net is trapping you. And in part 2, I'm going to show you precisely what to do about it, step by step with real numbers. The advice everyone got in America. Walk into any financial planning office in America and ask where to start. You'll get a version of the same answer. Build your emergency fund first. 3 months of expenses at minimum. 6 months if you're self-employed, have variable income, or work in a volatile industry. Keep it in a high-yield savings account. Keep it liquid. Don't invest it. Don't touch it unless something actually breaks.
This advice is not wrong. Let me be completely clear about that up front. Because what I'm about to say will sound like I'm arguing against emergency funds. I am not. An emergency fund is one of the most important financial tools available to a working American. Without one, every unexpected expense, a blown transmission, a medical copay, a sudden job loss, lands on a credit card at 22% interest and starts compounding against you immediately. An emergency fund keeps you off that treadmill. It protects your investments from being raided. It is genuinely foundational. The problem isn't the emergency fund. The problem is what happens after it. The problem is that the advice has a beginning and no middle. It tells you to build the floor, but it never tells you what to build on top of it. And without that second chapter, the floor becomes the ceiling. 3 to 6 months of expenses sits in a savings account earning 3.5% to 4.5% in today's rate environment. And there it stays, year after year. The balance doesn't shrink because nothing catastrophic happens. The balance doesn't grow because every time it edges higher, the person feels comfortable and stops adding to it. The money is liquid. The money is safe. The money is doing almost nothing. Here is the number that changes the conversation. The long-term average real return of a diversified U.S. equity index fund after inflation is approximately 7% annually. The average yield on a high-yield savings account in 2026 is hovering between 4 and 4.5% before inflation. Inflation in 2026 is running at roughly 2.8%. That means the real return on your emergency fund cash is somewhere between 1 and 1.5%. $1 sitting in a high-yield savings account in 2026 is earning a real return of approximately 1 to 1.5% per year after inflation. $1 in a diversified index fund has historically earned a real return of approximately 7% per year over long periods. The gap between those two numbers is the cost of overfunding your safety net. Now, let's run what that gap actually means in dollars, because the percentage difference sounds abstract until you see the compounding arithmetic. Imagine someone who has 12 months of living expenses in cash, roughly $24,000, when 6 months, $12,000, would be sufficient for their situation. That extra $12,000 is sitting in a savings account earning 4% nominal, call it 1.2% real. Over 20 years at 1.2% real, that $12,000 grows to roughly $15,300 in real purchasing power terms. Now move that same $12,000 into a low-cost total market index fund earning 7% real annually. Over 20 years, it becomes $46,500. The difference between overfunding your emergency account and right-sizing it is $31,200 from a single reallocation decision. That's not a fringe finding. That's arithmetic.
Darnell and his wife Sandra both work. Combined household income is $94,000. They have 2 kids, a mortgage they bought conservatively, and no credit card debt. They are, by almost every conventional measure, doing the right things. They have $31,000 in a high-yield savings account, which is approximately 14 months of essential expenses. They have been proud of that number for 3 years. It grew to $31,000, and then it stopped growing. Because once it reached what felt like a safe number, the contributions redirected toward lifestyle rather than investments. Their combined 401k balance at age 39 is $62,000. Darnell contributes enough to get his employer match. Sandra does the same. Neither has touched the contribution rate since they enrolled 5 years ago. At their current savings rate, projecting forward at 7% annual growth with no additional contributions beyond current levels, they will reach retirement at 67 with approximately $430,000. The standard planning guideline, Fidelity's 10 times final salary rule, suggests they should have closer to $940,000 for their income level. The shortfall is over $500,000. Darnell and Sandra are not reckless. They are not bad savers. They are people who followed the emergency fund rule, felt safe, stopped accelerating, and are on a trajectory toward a retirement that will require significant lifestyle reduction or continued part-time work well into their 70s. The safety net caught them. The safety net also stopped them. This is the story the emergency fund rule doesn't tell you. It tells you to stop falling. It doesn't tell you how to start climbing. There is a second cost to overfunded emergency reserves that goes beyond the simple math of cash versus index funds. It's behavioral, and in some ways, it's more expensive than the arithmetic. When people have a large, comfortable cash cushion, their sense of financial urgency drops. The anxiety that might otherwise push them to open a brokerage account, increase their 401k contribution, or explore a backdoor Roth, that anxiety is replaced by the comfort of the balance. They know the money is there. They know it's safe. The urgency to do more dissolves into something that feels like financial responsibility, but is actually financial stasis. Behavioral economists have a name for this. It's called the security paradox, the phenomenon where achieving a goal designed to reduce risk also reduces the motivation to pursue the next goal. You built the emergency fund. The brain registers success. The motivation to continue recalibrates. The next financial milestone, the kind that actually builds long-term wealth, never gets the same urgency signal that building the emergency fund did. A 2025 survey by Bankrate found that 57% of Americans who report having a fully funded emergency reserve have not increased their retirement contribution rate in the past 2 years. The correlation isn't coincidence. The safety net becomes the destination instead of the launching pad. The third cost is inflation erosion. Silent, slow, and almost nobody tracks it in real time. In 2020, if your monthly essential expenses were $4,000 and you held 3 months of cash, your emergency fund sat at $12,000. In 2026, with cumulative inflation since 2020 running roughly 22%, your actual monthly essential expenses have risen to approximately $4,880. Your 3-month target is now $14,600. If you didn't adjust the balance to match, your emergency fund has actually shrunk in real purchasing power while the nominal number stayed flat. You feel safer than you are. That gap between perceived safety and actual safety is where the trap lives. Let me pull back and show you what we've covered today, because this is the foundation that Part 2 builds directly on top of. We started in Phoenix, in a room full of people who had done the right thing and still felt stuck. We looked at why. Not because they failed, but because the rule they followed was incomplete. It gave them a floor with no instructions for what to build next. We ran the math. That extra $12,000 sitting idle in a savings account instead of a low-cost index fund costs a typical household over $31,000 in real purchasing power over 20 years from a single reallocation decision. Scale that across an overfunded reserve of $30,000 or $40,000, and the cost climbs into 6 figures. We met Darnell and Sandra,
Two people doing everything right by the conventional playbook, headed toward a retirement that falls over $500,000 short of what they'll actually need. Not because they're irresponsible, because nobody gave them Chapter 2. And we named the behavioral layer that makes this trap so sticky the security paradox, where the comfort of a full savings account removes the urgency to keep building. 57% of fully funded savers haven't accelerated their retirement contributions in 2 years. The safety net became the destination. It was always supposed to be the floor. In part 2, Dropping This Soon, we're gonna fix it. We'll walk through exactly when overfunding your emergency reserve is actually the right call. We'll build the 3-stage framework that turns a static cash account into a compounding wealth system. And we'll run Darnell and Sandra's numbers forward to show what 2 specific decisions made in a single afternoon can do to a 30-year retirement trajectory. The difference is over $300,000. Same income, same jobs, 2 decisions. That's part 2. Don't miss it.
Before you go, if this math reframed something for you today, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below and tell me, how many months of expenses are you currently holding in your emergency fund? There's no wrong answer, just honest ones. And if you know someone who's been sitting on a large cash reserve thinking they're doing the right thing, share this video with them. It might be the most valuable 15 minutes they spend this month. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Part 2 is coming soon, and the framework in that video is the piece that actually changes the numbers. See you there.